Well, joining us now, George Santos, who used to be in the House of Representatives. Just remind us, George, for our listeners and our viewers, how you left that job.
They dragged me out.
You got expelled.
I got expelled, yes. I was expelled from the House of Representatives, being only the sixth member ever, but one without any convictions and one that did not join the Confederacy.
But you are a convicted felon.
Not yet, no. Not until I'm sentenced. That's how it works in federal court.
So you are sitting here waiting to be sentenced, having been kicked out of the House of Representatives. But because this is the new era of Trump, I'm just going to say, how did you like the speech?
If I told you the truth, I didn't listen to the speech.
You're kidding.
I couldn't. I was in a room. I was at the Waldorf Astoria. It was echoey. All I got were bits and pieces and Hillary Clinton laughing and nodding her head. So I still don't know what transpired, and I've been on this vacuum. All I can say is Melania looks stunning, and I can also say is that I don't like that it was indoors. I think we could have handled the cold.
You think it was a bit of a wuss, or you think there was a security fear, or what do you think went on?
I don't think it was the weather. So I was speaking to former colleagues of mine, and we were talking about this, and one of them suggested to me that they believe it had more to do with security than it had to do with the cold. It's not that cold. I mean, it's cold. I'm not going to underscore the fact that it's freezing.
But here we are.
But here we are, and we can bear this. There's hand warmers, feet warmers, you name it. There's ways. There's no such thing as bad weather, and to quote Tim Walz, there's such thing as bad clothing. And I can't believe I'm quoting Tim Walz on Inauguration Day. But
on clothing.
Which is even another more shocker. But I think there was an opportunity to give the American people this, because look, he did win the popular vote. It was such an overwhelming victory for him, a massive comeback despite all the mountains he had to climb. I really wish he would have given people the show they can.
So what, he came across as slightly removed, slightly elitist because he was indoors? I mean, there was no one out here. I mean, we should let people see perhaps, but there is literally kind of no one walking around Washington.
Yeah, no, it's a desert. The only thing is gridlocks of the cars, barricades in the streets. I don't know for who, but barricades in the streets. And yeah, sure. I mean, look, I don't want to say elitist, but it did seem a little stuffy that they didn't do some sort of lottery for members of Congress as guests. You know, let's put some real Americans in the room for once, and stop putting all the, as I call them, the oligarchy class and all the politicians. I'd love to see just regular day Americans and Joe Schmoes in there enjoying that moment, because it's so special to them.
Do you think he's surrounding himself with too many bros, too many oligarch bros? I mean, was that the shot you didn't want to see today?
I did not expect to see Mark Zuckerberg, his wife, Jeff Bezos and his wife, Elon Musk, and I appreciate these guys and what they do for the world. I just don't appreciate them having a privileged perch. They're American citizens just like everyone else, and I want them to be treated as such. They're taxpayers like everyone else.
Doesn't this go to the heart, though, of what Trump is about? I.e., he kind of talks the talk about being out there for average, ordinary Americans, but you know he's not, George. You know he comes in, he cuts tax for the very, very richest, and he surrounds himself with billionaires, and he doesn't really want to shake hands with anyone who's not a real celebrity. I mean, we know that is the guy.
I disagree. I was not a celebrity when I first met Donald Trump. He shook my hand. I was nobody, actually. Nobody knew who I was 6 years ago. I've seen Donald Trump extend grace and kindness to the American people many times in rallies and events, and I just don't appreciate that there wasn't a system for people to have the opportunity to be in the room today. That's something I will hold in criticism to the now, again, President of the United States, Donald Trump.
A lot of our listeners and our viewers will not be able to reconcile the scenes that were so beautifully, carefully choreographed today in the Rotunda with the scenes 4 years ago on January the 6th when he was essentially inciting violence and a riot.
Look, Emily, I think that the over-sensationalization of January 6th...
140 injured, 5 dead.
I understand. One person died that day. It was Ashley Babbitt. People might have died of injuries later for other reasons.
It left
But on that day, one person died, and it was Ashley Babbitt by an unarmed veteran, was shot at point-blank range by a Capitol Police officer. She expressed no sign of violence, but I understand the Capitol Police officer's shoe. I've gotten to understand it. No.
Come on, George. We're talking about 140 people that were injured. You know that there were law enforcement people that were hurt.
I understand,
and crazy things with fire extinguishers and
But Emily, I was the first Republican to condemn January 6th, so you don't need to tell me that. I was the first one to go out there criticize the actions, because that's not what America is about. Forget Republicans and Democrats. I was the first one to go out there and criticize it. I was the first one to say that if President Trump's going to extend pardons, I believe he should really do it to nonviolent folks, people who are being prosecuted for just simply standing on the lawn. That's nuts. Okay, or somebody who walked in through Statuary Hall, moved the little ropes around, looked around, but committed no act of violence. I think those people don't need to be in jail.
But it's bigger than that, isn't it? It's not just about the pardons. It's about the man who has got back to the place that he's craved to be by ignoring the last set of results. He still hasn't conceded that he lost the last election. Why does that matter to people?
Emily, you don't like it when I say this. We went through this on election night. I'll go through this again. I have a lot of respect for you. I respect your positions. But I still can't reconciliate 2020. Because if Joe Biden received 80,000 votes, where were the 80 million votes, where were they for Kamala Harris?
That is a nonsense argument. That is a nonsense.
So I'll give you a better nonsensical argument. Where is the deficiency of 9 million voters who chose to not come out this year, even though this was an existential threat to democracy? Democracy was on the ballot. If Trump won, the country would be in disarray.
What you're saying
9 million people didn't believe it.
You do not trust your own electoral system in this country.
I don't. For years, I haven't trusted it.
You don't trust.
This has nothing to do with 2020.
So you don't trust the results of what has happened this time around?
It's not that I don't trust. It's not because I trust it when we win. I'm skeptical of our electoral system.
But are you skeptical this time around?
No, the American it was overwhelming majority.
Can you see how convenient that sounds?
Well, the Democrats are saying this has been a captured election. Have you not heard them say this?
No, I really haven't.
Oh, they're out there.
Really haven't.
Pramila Jayapal is saying that this is illegitimate.
I don't remember Biden going to the middle of the rotunda and starting to, squash police officers to death.
Okay, well, neither did Trump do that. Is that a fair take?
It is a fair take.
Okay, there you go. Trump didn't do that either.
There was no insurrection.
Look, I think that the way we look at it is January 6th was a stretch to call it an insurrection. I don't think it was an insurrection. I think it didn't rise to the level of an insurrection. It was a riot. It was a bad riot, very similar to the riots we experienced all year long in New York with Black Lives Matter following the unjustful death of George Floyd.
And there were convictions. Okay, George, you know what?
Not as many.
I'm going to say that this is the day when America's kind of new revolution starts, right? You will be judging Trump, presumably. I mean, hopefully, you will be judging him.
I just did now.
In terms of how will you decide whether he succeeds in the next 4 years? How will that?
He delivers for the American people.
Which means?
He delivers relief on inflation. He delivers relief on the crippling inflation that's not just crushing middle-class Americans.
So he's got to cut inflation by when?
He needs to cut inflation by the end of this fiscal year.
In half, he said.
And I hope he does it. And that's the expectation.
Is that it?
Well, that it. The border.
I mean, do you want to see him take back Greenland? Do you want to see him
Well, Greenland's
move
moved
into
in already.
Canada?
Well, Greenland's moved in already. So look at this weather.
The polar vortex.
The polar vortex. Greenland is in America right now, and we might have not gotten the memo. But the reality is, Emily, if you really look at what he can't do worse than we are. He can't do any worse than
He's inheriting a really strong economy.
No, he is not.
You can
that
say
is
what
a
you like.
Bold-faced lie.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
He's inheriting an incredible jobs market. He's inheriting good growth.
He's inheriting an incredible government jobs market. We had 18,000 new jobs added to the federal government, which means more crippling deficits, more expenditures in the government, furthering debt. That was this last jobs report. 18,000 of the jobs added were government jobs. That's not a good job market. That's actually awful.
So I'm going to revisit the question about Greenland because it is funny and it is kind of crazy and people are laughing it off. But actually, every time he says something like, oh, I can't rule out military action on Panama. I can't rule out military action on Greenland. Do you know what? There are hundreds of people who have to make it their only job to try and work out what the fuck he's talking about. And actually, that's really tiring for everyone, isn't it?
You know what, Emily? Everybody wants to talk about when Trump says something, it's a little off-color, off-putting. Aren't you upset? And shouldn't everybody be upset at what Joe Biden just did on his way out? He pardoned a slew of people with preemptive pardons, people who weren't charged, his entire family.
Because he's scared.
Well, you know what? He criticized President Trump. Jake Tapper today acknowledged that Biden is a hypocrite. CNN is acknowledging Joe Biden is a hypocrite and a liar, a prolific liar. For 50 years, he's lied. He said he wouldn't pardon Hunter. He pardoned Hunter. He said he wouldn't pardon his family in the January 6th committee. He did. Now, look, I've had my issues with the truth in the past, and I acknowledge that. And you will always hold me to that candle to my foot.
Wait, when you say I've had my issues with the truth in the past, you mean literally concocting a whole resume about things that never happened in your entire life?
Joe Biden never was top of his class. Joe Biden was never a teacher at Penn State, and I can go on and on, right? And he became president of the United States. So we can say Joe Biden fabricated. No, absolutely not. So here's what I'm just trying to say, Emily. For you to understand what I'm trying to deliver to you is, everybody's going to want to focus on Trump talking about Greenland and Trump talking about Canada. Canada will not become the 51st state. I over my dead body and the entire Republican Party, because if you look at the electoral map, it would be a disaster for Republicans. Secondly, it's like adding a new California to the map. We don't need that. Secondly, Greenland, we just need to have a great partnership. The Prime Minister came out the other day and says, we don't want to be Danish, we don't want to be Americans, we want to be Greenlanders. And I want Greenlanders to be Greenlanders and our great, strong allies and partners.
Last thought. You're the first, I think, openly gay Republican.
But I'm not the only gay Republican.
No, openly gay Republican, right?
I'm the first openly gay Republican, that's for sure.
So I guess my question is, there's been a lot of concentration now on the end of DEI, the end of, giving people jobs for the wrong reasons, the end of LGBTQ in the military. What do you hear? When you hear that, do you think fine?
I voted for all of that. I had the opportunity to vote on ending anything but meritocracy. I think meritocracy is the way to go. You're an accomplished journalist. Do you feel like you should be replaced by somebody based on their skin color or their sexual orientation?
I guess my question is, what
Well,
happens?
answer my question.
Well,
come on, it's an easy question.
So I'm a meritocrat, but I also recognize that the person that actually blessed, if you like, or confirmed J.D. Vance was Brett Kavanaugh, right? Brett Kavanaugh, who was accused of sexual harassment by a law professor, by Christine Blasey Ford.
With no credibility, because she remembered she had one beer but couldn't remember anything else?
Do you know what? If I was a young woman in America today, I'd be thinking, I'm not going to bother shouting out. I'm not going to bother complaining.
Oh, no. I want women to come forward. Don't take me wrong. I want women to feel confident to come forward and face their accusers. I believe women, but I believe women when it is not a politicized stunt to stifle somebody else's career because of political differences. That's my issue. Women need to come up. We have the duty to support
and get accused
women.
of politicizing. That's what will happen every single time.
Well, Christine Blasey Ford, if she wanted to do it, she should have done it years earlier when he was just a judge or a law clerk. Why wait until he got nominated to the Supreme Court? He was already a judge. She could have done it before he joined the bench in the first place. But no, she needed a moment to shine and do the whole big shebang with the entire world watching her testimony. And that, to me, was a stunt.
George Santos, great to have you up here on the roof in Washington, D.C.
Always a pleasure.
Many thanks.
Thank you.
The Newsagents. This is a Global Player original podcast.